Welcome back, everybody. I'm glad you decided to join us again. If you remember from last time, we are really starting to dig into the inner workings of Ankh-Morpork in this Discworld Noir game. We traced an octagram of murders, which were being conducted in Ankh-Morpork, mirroring the 8 murders to summon Nylanathtep from his tomb or resting place in Watery Leshp, or whatever extra-dimensional space he's in. And it looks like the true believers of the cult of Anu Anu are doing that, for reasons yet to be determined. There have been 6 murders so far. 3 we witnessed, 3 we did not, and they were at different points around the octagram. We determined that there were 2 more places where murders were likely to happen, in Dagon Street and in the Wizard's Pleasence. We furthermore determined that the center of the octagram was here in the Disc Theater, so presumably something pretty freaky is going on there. But before we do anything with that, I wanted to pick up one thing that I neglected in previous videos. So let me head over to Rodin's workshop. The sculptor, who if you'll remember was... Malachite was hiding out here for a while, and he's gone and Malachite's gone. However, if we go over to where Malachite was, and I have no idea why you would go over here normally, you can find these plaster-encrusted bandages. They don't look like anything much, but we would like to know a little bit about them.
I'd found the plaster-encrusted bandages on the floor of Rodin's workshop. Apart from the fact that they'd been soaked in plaster and left to dry, there didn't seem to be anything unusual about them.
All right. So we would like to find out more about these bandages, why they are there. So there's really only 2 places that I can think of to go for information at this point, one specific and one general. So let's start with the specific place. We know that the Octarine Parrot used to be a troll bar, and in fact it was Sapphire who pointed us to Rodin's workshop in the first place. Now Sapphire's skipped town, but maybe Mankin can tell us something. Maybe, since this is used to be at least a troll bar, and there would presumably be trolls coming and going, Malachite and Sapphire at least have been here, not to mention Madame Lodestone, the singer, and potentially Therma as well.
Is this a good time for a friendly chat? Given that there's never a good time for a friendly chat, I guess it's as good as any.
Let's see if Mankin has got anything to say.
Do these mean anything to you, bandages?
They seem to have plaster caked into them.
No, I don't know anything about that.
Yes, you do. You are the most useless liar I've ever met.
It's nothing to do with me. That's a matter for the watch.
The watch? They're only bandages.
That's all I'm saying on the matter. I don't want no trouble. And they are trouble.
Interesting. So, these bandages seem to have rattled Mankin pretty badly. Well, he said it was a matter for the watch, and that was actually my next source of information. See if one Nobby Knobs knows anything about him. Hey, it's not impossible. He's been remarkably helpful, considering it's Nobby.
Back behind the desk, I see.
Hello, Luton.
What do you got, Nobby? Anything for us about these?
Do these mean anything to you?
Well, it could be the work of a plaster surgeon.
A plaster surgeon?
Yeah. The cosmetic surgeons for trolls.
Boo.
Some trolls on the run wants to change his face. Well, he goes to a plaster surgeon. The watch would like to get their hands on any plaster surgeons working in Ankh-Morpork, I can tell you.
Don't you want to know where I got them?
They're just some plaster-soaked bandages. Why would I be interested?
Nobby, do you ever actually do any detective work?
Well, I'm only a corporal.
I'm beginning to understand how detritus got to be sergeant.
He's pretty useless, although not to us. He's very helpful for us. So, looks like Rodin was working as a plaster surgeon. This opens up all kinds of possibilities. Could be that Sapphire has changed her face and made a run for it. It could be that Therma, or not Madame Lodestone, could be that Therma has used him as a source. And I think we understand a bit more why Mankin was afraid, although I wonder if there was anything recently that would cause him to be afraid of the plaster surgeon and his clientele. He doesn't seem like a guy that's easily shaken. Anyway, so that does it for that. I think a lot of people voted persuasively to go to Dagon Street first.
The moon over Dagon Street lit the rundown alley. It didn't look like anyone was around. It was as abandoned as the Octarine Parrot on open stage night.
Well, let's see. Doesn't look like there's a whole lot around here.
One of the shops in the street was called the Three Jolly Luck Takeaway Fish Bar. I remembered that name from somewhere. Something to do with Mr. Hong. I remember he went missing somehow.
Missing's probably a bad sign. It's a boarded up shop front.
I couldn't pull the boards off with my hands.
Well, fortunately, we don't need to use our hands. We've got our handy crowbar. Yeah, I'm concerned for Mr.
Where
Hong.
I'd pulled away the boards was an open window.
Let's see what we got. Some debris?
The fish bar was littered with assorted debris. Amongst the debris, I found a bone that seemed a little out of place. The bone seemed out of place somehow. I wasn't sure why. I didn't want to take the bone. It was bad enough that I'd been carrying around some dead troll's tooth all this time.
It seems ominous. What else we got? Pots?
The fish bar was full of cooking pots. Only to be expected, I guess. I don't know what the last thing cooked here was, but it seemed to have been prepared recently.
That's interesting, because nothing else in this place looked like it happened recently. Well, we didn't want a werewolf on the streets, but let's see if we can turn into a wolf here.
There was a disturbing dark magenta scent in the fish bar. Something that resonated with cosmic evil. It scared me. It scared me that anything could have such a disturbing scent. And it scared me that I could tell what color cosmic evil was.
That's funny. So I wonder if this is the scent of our killer? Oh, no, it lets us pick it up. So that means this dark magenta is a new scent. Let's compare it to the serial killer's other magenta scent.
There was definitely some similarity between the magenta and dark magenta scents, but it wasn't clear to me what that connection might be.
Interesting. So this is like our serial killer, but worse somehow. And that's probably all we can do here for now. Next up, I think we ought to check out the Wizard's Pleasence. See if that was the place to go. We know that a murder is going to be conducted at one of these two locations. Well, both of these locations. And I guess it could be that one was already conducted there at Dagon Street if that bone was a human bone. But if not...
The Wizard's Pleasence was a small, newt-haunted meadow in a horseshoe bend in the Ankh, inside the grounds of the Unseen University, separated from it but connected to the university gardens by the Bridge of Sighs. On summer evenings, if the wind is blowing towards the river, it is a nice area for a stroll.
If the wind is not blowing towards the river, it is always a bad area for a stroll. Anywhere in the Ankh.
The Pleasance was full of dense bushes.
Maybe we can hide.
I could hide in the bushes, but for how long? I'd need to know that the next murder was definitely going to be here before I did that.
Yeah, fair enough. Alright, has anybody been here? No, just the Ankh there.
On a good... Presumably today was not a good day.
Alright, well, nothing for it then. I guess we head to the disc.
Everyone on the disc knows the legend of Eleanor of Tsot. Or at least everyone knows a legend of Eleanor of Tsot. Or Krinix. Or El Harib. Ask most people and they'll tell you that she was the cause of the Tsotian Wars. Of course, ask most people and they'll tell you the patrician is a kind and benevolent man. Never trust what most people tell you. The real cause of the Tsotian Wars was a little-known goddess called Errata.
Well, he gets points for projection. I did some acting in high school in the drama club, and that was pretty much the only direction I got, was to speak loud enough for everybody to hear me. One time the drama teacher told me to go where my heart told me to go on stage, but that didn't help at all. Anyway, here's the this actor, and kind of a neat area in here. I like the multicolored Kind of look like Chinese lanterns to me, whatever they're supposed to be. Not a whole lot going on in here, but we do have this flyer.
I'd picked up the theater flyer from the Disc Theater. It told me about the plays in the Disc's current season. The 8 plays in sequence were The Happy Prince of Copperhaven, Antilogy and Cleopatra, Kensington, The King of Ankh, The Leering King, The Tyrant, Truculus and Cressylic, and Titus Diplodocus. The flyer didn't tell me anything about them, though.
I think my favorite is the Leering King. That's pretty classy for King Lear. So let's go talk to this fop. Nothing else of note up here.
The pompous windbag on the stage was Previtier. He went beyond being a ham. He had 2 eggs, fried mushrooms, and a gigantic rasher of bacon. That's pretty good. You've been acting long?
One is either born an actor, or one is never an actor.
Yeah, I can just see you paddling about the womb with a script in hand.
Do you doubt my credentials as the Disc's premier performer of dramatic scenes?
As far as I'm concerned, one actor is as good as another. You come on, you speak your lines, and then you get killed. How hard can it be?
Here I stand, your slave, a poor, infirm, weak, and despised old man. Do you slight me such?
What?
You are not abreast of Whell's fair pen, then, stranger.
The name's Luton. And no, I don't know Whell's work at all.
My name is Previtier, and my realm is that of tragedy and comedy. The finest arts are my purview.
Yeah, if you say so.
Yeah, Luton and Previtier are going to get along just like thunder and lightning, I'm sure.
So you're an actor?
It is my calling to tread the boards, and for this I am called an actor.
Translation, yes. Why do you talk like that?
When one is blessed with silk, one does not wear cotton.
What's that supposed to mean?
You are not familiar with the ways of the theater, are you, my boy?
No. I always thought it was about getting killed in a different way every night.
Well, that's part of it. But it's also about the lines, the pomp and the circumstance. Men in skirts. Yes, yes. The play's the thing.
To catch the cash flow of the dim.
You disapprove? A man must his living make.
If he could make it with decent grammar, I wouldn't mind.
You should come and see the spectacle. Perhaps then you would cast less scorn upon our merry ways.
You want me to go to see a play?
Come to hear the wooden dialogue.
That's not much of a quote.
It was the best I could do at short notice.
What's playing at the moment?
Truculus and Cressylic. The tale of the frailty of woman and the stupidity of a man in love.
With a lot of bloody deaths thrown in for good measure.
But of course.
The frailty of women and the stupidity of a man in love sounds like how Luton would summarize his own life, so that's interesting. I guess that's part of that protagonist's warping effect on reality.
Tell me about the plays.
Would that I had the time to sing the praises of all Whell's masterworks. But time is short and life is fleeting.
Just tell me about the plays.
Our current season is a groundbreaking interpretation of Whell's most famous works, pushing back the boundaries of art and style.
Groundbreaking?
'Tis a term we of the noble calling use to describe the way each generation improves and expands upon the themes laid bare in the soul by inspiration.
In other words, your murder scenes look more and more realistic every year.
The triumph of effects.
Unfortunately, the triumph of effects over plot.
The plots are as entrancing as the day they were first written.
In other words, you haven't had any new ideas in decades.
If the way is true, why err from it?
Luton is not a big fan of the theater, you get the sense.
What can you tell me about this flyer?
Ah! The proud harbinger of our festivities, the page that trumpets the act that illuminates the soul.
That inhabits the body that slept on the seats that sat in the theater that shoddy carpenters made.
Do you mock me, my boy?
Oh, you're way ahead of me on that one.
Nice. Can't imagine he has anything to say about any of this other stuff.
I'd keep the list of names to myself until I knew more about it.
Yeah, that's the general. I don't want to ask this person. So, Previtier's probably got a number of things to say.
Tell me what you know about golden swords.
Alas, I know of but one such blade, the falchion from Troculus and Chrysalic.
The falchion was a slightly curved sword, cast in gold.
Well, the real one would be if it existed. Our prop is an old table leg whittled to a point.
Interesting.
About the prop? We have many other props, you know.
I meant what you said about the sword was interesting. I think it was the blade that killed me the other week.
You look surprisingly well for a cadaver, my boy.
Well, they don't make murders like they used to.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Interesting. So the current play also involves a golden sword.
Is there a gold-plated jewel in any of the plays?
Not that I'm aware of, dear boy, but Clef Patare is described as the jewel of the jelly, if that's any help.
What happens to her?
She gets bitten by an ass. It's very moving.
Yeah, I bet it gets the audience moving for the exits.
Bitten by an asp, eh? I guess that would be Clefitare, or Cleopatra's normal way out. Still, that is very interesting, given something that we found out about. That seems to be like how Reagan died.
Have you heard of Errata?
But, of course, the architect of the Tsortian Wars, the origin of our little play tonight.
How come?
Being the goddess of misunderstandings, Errata's popularity is lacking. And she feels slighted by not being invited to a certain wedding. So she plans a devious vengeance, which in turn causes the Tsortian War.
And is it based on a true story?
Everything is a truth of a sort.
Is that a yes or a no?
I am not one to judge such things.
So he doesn't have any idea what he's saying.
What would you say if I told you I suspected people are being murdered to summon a terrible entity to destroy the city?
I would say, doomsday is near, die all, die merrily.
That's from one of these silly plays, isn't it?
The King of Ankh, Act 4, Scene 1.
I was serious, you know. The disc might be the focal point for infernal forces that could destroy the city. I'd enjoy talking to you a lot more if you'd just stop quoting those damn plays. Do you realize how pathetic this makes you look?
What? Must I hold a candle to my shames?
You know, I think I'll be glad if this place does get destroyed by horrors from beyond time and space.
It'd be great publicity. Should I tell them how to spell my name?
Yeah, Luton does not like this guy.
What would you say if I told
Nope, same deal.
What?
Should I?
Does he know anything about the Elver sign?
I didn't want to mention the sign of the eel to just anyone. They'd think I was mad.
Fair enough. Well, nothing about that. You know, though, when he mentioned Reagan earlier, we didn't mention Reagan, but he mentioned somebody dying from an asp bite, just like Reagan died from a snake bite, it seemed like, or some kind of poison bite. Made me start to wonder about some of the other killings.
Have you heard of the counterweight killings?
A terrible state of affairs, a tragedy.
But do you know anything about it?
I know it's been very good for the gate receipts.
Has anything unusual happened around here recently?
Who am I to say what is usual and what is an aberrance of nature?
Believe me, if I had someone else to ask, I would.
The closest to an unusual occurrence was when Lucius, miserable souse that he is, missed the role in Titus Diplodocus.
Missed his role?
He was supposed to be playing Canapé, but he didn't turn up. I don't know where he is.
Where he is? He still hasn't turned up.
Probably afraid we're going to eat him alive when he finally drags his sorry carcass back here.
How about these specific killings?
A man named Mundy was killed recently.
Slain amidst the bright flags of peace, eh?
Well, hung upside down in his room with his eyes plucked out, actually.
Indeed. It reminds me of Will's epic, The Leering King. Such sweet sorrows.
What's that supposed to mean?
It means that the gods exploit our weaknesses to show us our faults.
More like the gods exploit our weaknesses because it's a bit of a laugh.
There may be truth in what you speak.
Interesting. So Mundy's death also reminded him of a play.
Do you know anything about the dwarf who rode his carriage off the Magdalen Bridge the other week?
Indeed, I do not. I trust he was not a friend of yours.
No, I didn't know him. His name was Reagan.
Reagan? I did not know him. Although I thank you for the news all the same.
You thank me for the news?
Though it be honest, it is never good to bring bad news.
Did the other children beat you up when you were little?
Oh, Luton.
There was a murder up in the rooftops recently. A troll named Malachite was stabbed to death. Did you hear about that?
I know naught of stabbings, save the foul betrayal in The Tyrant.
The Tyrant? A play?
We performed it but recently. The grandeur of the stage.
Cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war. The dogs of war?
In the play, the tyrant leads an army of dogs into battle. But they kept slipping all over the place because of the general muddiness.
Does he win?
Well, in the end, he's betrayed by his closest ally and stabbed to death by the people of Ephebi.
Doesn't sound like much of a victory.
No, but it's a glorious death. Et tu, Cletus. Pure poetry.
Well, I think we can see sort of what's going on here. It looks as though these deaths are mirroring the plays in some sense.
Do you know a troll by the name of Jasper Horst?
My dear boy, I can assure you that I do not know them.
That's not knowing somebody is almost as interesting as him knowing them at this point.
Seen any strange beasts around here?
Not since the transmogrification scene in Dream of Somewhere Near the End of Spring last year.
That's not very helpful.
Well, we didn't ask a very good question. I'm looking for, here we go, the other deaths.
There was a murder at Unseen University recently. The reader of esoteric occultism was killed. Do you know anything about that?
Alas, no. But all that must live must die. Passing through nature to eternity.
Remind me not to invite you to my next party.
So, interestingly, I don't know if we could have seen this coming, or if this is even the reason. I just actually kind of noticed this now. But it is interesting that the wizard was killed was the reader of esoteric occultism, and that this death happened shortly before a lot of esoteric occultism started becoming trouble in the city of Ankh-Morpork. That's just kind of a little detail that I had glossed over until right now.
Did you hear about the murder of the patrician's clerk?
The patrician. Uneasy lies the head that wears the crown.
I don't think he ever wears one, but I'll take that as a no.
This guy cannot wait to quote things at us at every turn. This is like a guy who knows all the lines from the whole Monty Python and the Holy Grail or something, and just whatever you say, that turns into a quote.
Have you heard about any merchants being murdered recently?
But of course. One was slain in this very theatre only days ago.
Really?
At the climax of Kensington, the merchant is strangled by his very wife. It was very dramatic.
The murder was in the play?
I would not take such pleasure in a real murder, my boy.
To mourn a mischief that is past and gone is the next way to draw new mischief on.
Couldn't you just say, bad things cause other bad things?
One must embrace the beauty of language.
Well, ease up on the hug, Privitier. I think the language needs to breathe a little.
That's good. Yeah, not too much else to ask about. Oh, we didn't ask about if he's seen either of the two dangerous women in our lives.
Do you know a woman named Ilsa or a man named Two Conkers?
My dear boy, I can assure you that I do not know them.
That's fine. How about the dwarf?
What do you know about a dwarf named Al-Kali?
My dear...
Alright, how about Carlotta?
I gave Carlotta's description to Privitier and asked him if she'd been around the theater.
Indeed, I have seen that young flower amongst the audience. She comes often and stays unto the end. I oft find myself musing as to what it is that draws her back.
You wonder why she bothers to come back? So, you're admitting that the plays aren't very good.
As good as they are, this young lady has been back to see the same play many times. And she is not alone. There are several such regulars, but perhaps these fine souls sense that the magic of each of the plays is timeless.
I suspect there's more to it than that. Can you describe any of the others?
Alas, only the lady's visage is burnt across my eyes like the dawn's first light.
I think Privitier's got a bit of a crush on Carlotta, but nonetheless that's very interesting news, and slightly suggestive, I imagine. Although they could be any group of people. Although her being at the Temple of Small Gods and us just finding out about all these goings-on is suggestive, I will admit. Okay.
Well, I have to go.
Parting is such sweet sorrow.
Whatever.
So this right here is, in my opinion, the only unfair part of the game. Other things have been a little tricky to figure out, but the game's at least pointed you in the right way, or things have at least made some kind of sense. And normally, when I played the game the first time, I absolutely ran into a brick wall here. No idea what to do. That's odd. Oh, I'd left a scene as a wolf, and so then I had to turn back into a human first. That's weird.
I quickly transformed into a wolf and had a sniff around. There was an eerie, dark magenta scent in the theater. But what caught my attention was the magenta scent that seemed to disappear into the stage. My murderer had been here.
And what I meant was unfair about that is, I actually moved over to the side here a little bit. When you first come in, it deposits you like right here. And if you try to wolf up,
If I was going to turn into a wolf, I'd better do it where Previtier couldn't see me.
it gives you that, which is normally the text it gives you when you have to find an entirely different scene. So I kept either trying to get him away or to find a different location, but no, actually they just want you to move close to the stage. It's the only area in the whole game where that happens, and there's not really any clues that it's happening, so I say boo. But anyway, once you turn into a wolf, you can find these marks here.
Where the scent had disappeared, there were some marks. I couldn't quite make them out, but they seemed to be a definite shape of some kind.
Definite shape.
I ran my finger around the marks casually. There was something about them that made you want to trace things on them, like a smiley face or a tic-tac-toe board. Well, something like that. Maybe something a little more sinister.
I see. Well, I think we might have some idea what it is. Actually, my first guess of this was wrong. My first guess was to trace this octagram of murders, but no. It's going to be the Elver sign.
I traced the sign of the eel across the marks, exactly as I'd learned how to do in the Libraris Apocrypha. There was a faint click, and the next thing I knew, there was a passageway under the stage.
And there we go. Now, do keep in mind that we're investigating, as we said, some esoteric occult practices. And so it's likely that whatever they're getting up to is sort of warping the nature of space-time. And the reason I say that is because of this. I think it's fairly unlikely that whatever this fluorescent green lava stalagmite-infused
The
cave
passageway
is.
led into a dark and ominous vault. The whole sepulchral temple seemed to be formed from curves and angles that would give geometry teachers nightmares.
Remember, Nylanathatep sleeps in sunken Leshp, and so I think what we're seeing here is sort of an altar and a cavern starting to bridge the gap between Ankh-Morpork and Leshp, which is definitely a bad idea, a bad thing.
The centerpiece to this disturbing chamber was a stone altar, engraved with a map of the Circle Sea. It looked centuries old, the kind of altar that could tell a few tales if it could talk. I was glad it couldn't.
Alright, so now we know where this altar is. The one other lead that I felt like we should really follow up on was, we know that, or at least we suspect, that Hwell's plays are mirroring the murders that we've seen around town so far.
Who would Sir like to see this time?
But actually, before we go to see them, I want to ask the Count something.
Can I see the Count?
I am not...
Yes.
Still here, I see.
In a sense.
I'm actually including this because this is one of these little dialogue options that I never actually knew about until this time.
I had been...
Yeah. Death doesn't have a whole lot to say. Neither does the Count about almost anything. But there is one thing they will talk about, which I think is interesting.
Have you heard of the goddess Errata?
A goddess? Yes. Yes, she was. I always liked your mother. That's why I married her, I suppose.
Is he...
dead? No. You'll know when he dies.
How?
I will swing my scythe.
Do you have to do that?
No. But when I appear in person, I am required to separate the soul from its body.
Why?
It has symbolic value.
Do you know Errata?
The goddess of misunderstandings. Yes.
What's she like?
Chaotic and confusing. But
Figures?
she has a certain sense of justice, I think.
Justice?
All the gods are sentimentalists at heart. Of course, I never let that sort of thing get in my way.
I'm sure you don't, Death. This actually goes on to make me think that we're supposed to find out about errata earlier than we do.
Well, goodbye. I'm sure we'll meet again.
Oh, you can be certain of it.
Because...
Incidentally, I rather like your hard-boiled monologues.
Thanks.
You do?
Oh, yes. And of course, the way you can actually think out of the corner of your mouth, very impressive.
I didn't know I was doing it.
Oh, yes. Take that, you doity rat. Wonderful stuff.
We have never said that, Death.
Very entertaining.
Uh-huh.
You know, sometimes I've wondered if I should take the scythe around. You know,
No,
violin
Death.
picks.
Death, don't do that.
Would certainly add to the atmosphere of menace and uncertainty.
Really?
Of course, I don't play the violin. And I can't talk out of the corners of my mouth. It's a great shame.
Just a bizarre little dialogue. Anyway, yeah, because after a certain point, once we start finding out about the cult, the Count really runs out of things to say. If you ask him about anything now, either Death says he shouldn't talk to us about it, or Luton just says, I don't think the Count will have anything to say about that. So yeah, I think Errata is supposed to be somebody we talked about earlier. So let's see if we can look up those plays. See if we can get a handle on what's going on. Maybe we can tell exactly what kind of murders we're going to be looking for.
I looked up Hwell in the library and found his complete works. In there was a discussion of the 8 great tragedies, Hwell's bloodiest works. From the About the Author paragraph, I learned that Hwell was a dwarf who was banished from his tribe not only because of his claustrophobia, but because of his tendency to daydream. Both undesirable, to say the least, if you work in a mine. 102, and in the prime of his life for a dwarf, Hwell now worked for Vittler's Plays at the Disc Theatre as one of the premier playwrights of the day. The 8 great tragedies were given in great detail. 8 plays, each with a collection of murders, usually with one more particularly gruesome or grotesque than the others, presumably for use in publicity trailers. The publicity trailers helped draw people into the theater by being towed around town to display posters. There was something suspiciously familiar about some of those murders.
I imagine there are. Can we look up the tragedies again? Maybe we can find out in particular what they are.
The 8 great tragedies were still in the complete works of Hwell. Well, it wasn't like they were going anywhere. Cheery collection of plays. In Titus Diplodocus, Titus was responsible for dismembering and eating various people before meeting his own grisly demise.
Ugh.
In almost all the other plays, the lead met a horrible end. The Happy Prince of Copperhaven, who was poisoned at the end, and Tilogy and Cleffatara, who were stabbed and poisoned by an asp, respectively. Kensington, who was strangled by his wife. The Leering King, who had his eyes gouged out. The Tyrant, who was stabbed repeatedly in the back, and Truculus and Cressylic. He gets dragged through the streets of Sort until dead, and she is one of the tiny handful of protagonists to actually survive one of Hwell's action-packed blockbuster murder fests. If they held a Protagonists of Hwell's Tragedies annual reunion, the only other person there would be the lead role in The King of Ankh.
Interesting. So, not that many people seem like they survive. We could go looking for parallels, and you're certainly welcome to do that in the thread, but that's I think all I should say for now. So let's head back to the Disc Theater. Actually, before we do that, I want to have one last little Hail Mary play here. I've got one more thing. I'm going to try to go to Navi. I'm going to get the Watch involved with this, see if Vime's going to sort this out.
Just thought we could have a little chat.
Oh, alright then. Make it quick.
Just see if we can actually bring in the cavalry.
You're not going to believe this, but I have to tell you anyway. There's a cult at work in the city, and if we don't stop them, they're going to destroy the city at the very least, and probably a lot more beside. Frankly, I don't know who else to turn to, and I thought I might be able to get you on my side.
You're right.
Oh.
That I can get you on my side?
Nah, that I'm not going to believe it. I'm sorry, Luton. Coming back from the grave is one thing. I mean, we all know that it happens all the time, don't we? But cults plotting to destroy the city. Nah, sorry. You just pull my leg. We'd know about it.
And now you do. I've just told you.
Really? Got any evidence?
Well, a little, actually, but,
Octograms of...
yeah, we can't really tell them about anything. As you might expect, we're going to have to sort this one out on our own. So, back to the disc we go. Let's see if he can tell us anything about those 8 great tragedies.
Mind if I ask some more questions?
It is neither here nor there.
It's not a quote. It's just something that people say. Let's see. Find it on here. Here we go.
Tell me about the 8 great tragedies. And don't make me regret asking you about this.
The 8 great tragedies are considered to be among the finest of Hwell's plays, each one a poignant drama with an insight into the mortal condition.
That's all you have to say?
I could tell you much more.
Such as?
I could tell of the soul-searching anguish of Village in The Happy Prince of Copperhaven, as he struggles to decide whether to avenge the death of his father, whilst in the meantime inadvertently stabbing and poisoning the entire cast in oh so many humorous misunderstandings.
No, that's fine.
Awesome.
Oh, in the dead vast middle of the night, he cries. Oh, that my lover's father had not hidden behind that tapestry whilst I was practicing with my poignard.
That's enough.
And the famous soliloquy, to be or not to be. Oh, what's the point? Nobody's listening. Or perhaps I could tell of the tempestuous love of Antilogy for Cleopatra, queen of the Jelly Baby.
Stop it!
Perhaps the unspeakable acts of Titus Diplodocus. If one good deed in all my life I did, I do repent it from my very soul. That's all, folks.
All right, enough.
Our revels now are ended.
Stop! I knew I shouldn't have asked.
And we brought this on ourselves. Alright, he's got nothing to say to us. But, now that we know a little bit more about the cycle of the plays, and we understand what's going on, that there is a correlation between the murders and the deaths in the play, who knows, maybe Hwell was inspired somehow by visions from Nylanathatep or Lesh or something like that. Now that we know about that, as I say, I just have to make sure that we make the connection for Luton.
I had a suspicion that the altar had something to do with Nylanathatep. I suspected the sepulchral temple was dedicated to the laddering horror.
Yes, I think that's probably a pretty safe bet.
Using the map, I worked out where each of the 8 great tragedies had taken place. They made an octagram around the edge, just like the counterweight killings did in Ankh-Morpork. I could match each of the tragedies to one of the murders, and the positions corresponded precisely. I knew that someone was going to get dragged to death from the wizard's Pleasence, and that some unlucky fellow was going to get eaten in Dagon Street. I had a feeling I knew what had bothered me about the bone in the fish bar.
Uh-oh.
It was a human femur. That meant there was only one murder to go, and that it would take place at the wizard's Pleasence.
Bad news. Alright. Well, let's get out of here. Sorry, Privitier. We got other pressing business. I guess he doesn't notice you disappearing beneath the stage all those times. But let's go and see if we can prevent what's going to go on.
Someone was definitely following me.
It's a bad sign. Can we,
I didn't want to transform in such an exposed area.
Alright, I suppose that makes sense. Here's this dog over here. I feel like we've,
I wasn't an expert on dogs, but I thought that this black thoroughbred dog was a Klachian hound, also known as the Kelef Klachani. Small, proud, and ruthless, the Kelef Klachani were prized by dog breeders throughout the Circle Sea. What this one was doing out on the streets was anyone's guess.
I feel like we've seen this dog before in front of the Guild of Archaeologists. Interesting, but not strictly relevant to our main thing. The pathing is really weird in here. I don't know why, but Luton, what are you doing? Stuff it. Hide in these bushes, Luton. Also, the animation for hiding in the bushes is a little bizarre and deliberate. But it works out enough.
I don't know how long I'd have to wait until something happened, but it turned out to be less than I thought. I'd suspected I'd been being followed, and I wasn't surprised to find that Al Kali was skulking around behind me. Gods alone knows how he got into the university. But if I could do it, I guess anyone could.
Well, maybe we can surprise him and... Creepy little guy. Ugh. That's bad.
It was over in seconds. I was about to follow the killer's trail when I saw a familiar face.
Carlotta.
Why did you carry on with the case, Luton?
Too many people told me to stop.
I was hoping it wouldn't come to this. I like you, Luton. It didn't have to be this way.
So you're behind this, are you?
I'm just a servant. My master, Anu.
That beast is Mooncalf's god?
Good call for the people in the
Mooncalf
thread.
didn't start this cult. I did. When the last human worshippers of Anu had passed on, leaving only an empty temple in their wake, the cult lived on among the lycanthropes. My late husband got me involved, and I came back to Ankh-Morpork to arrange everything.
Came back?
I thought you'd realize, Luton. I'm Therma.
Also good call for whoever realized that.
Malachite, didn't you?
I didn't kill any of them. My master did that. We just arranged everything for him. He's stronger when we gather together and pray.
You were in the Temple of Small Gods each time there was a murder.
It was a perfect alibi.
Why was Malachite looking for you?
I'm his sister.
His sister? Hands up who can spot the big problem here.
I was adopted by Mr. and Mrs. Karst. They named me Therma. And Malachite and I grew up together.
What happened?
It's a tough life when you're a poor troll. And tougher still when you weren't born a troll. I used to sit at the table eating bread, while the rest of the family was chewing coal sandwiches. That kind of thing leaves its mark on a girl.
My heart bleeds for you.
Malachite and I broke into the von Uberwald mansion and made off with some of the Count's valuables, including that pendant you've been carrying around.
And that jeweled box in the carriage that presumably held the asp that poisoned Reagan.
That's right.
How did you and Malachite get separated?
He got caught, but he didn't tell the watch about me. I thought I'd seen the last of him. I sold most of what I got, and I was living off it comfortably. But I'd seen that painting in the hallway, and it got me thinking.
The painting that looks like you?
Exactly. I reinvented myself as a debutante, and I seduced Ulrich and married into high society. I went back to Uberwald with him, changed my name to Carlotta, and my life as a troll was forgotten. Therma was dead. Long live Carlotta von Uberwald.
Did you know Ulrich was a werewolf?
Not until the honeymoon. That was a surprise, I can tell you. Not entirely an unpleasant one, I have to say.
How did you get involved in this cult business?
Before he died, Ulrich inducted me into the worship of Anu Anu, and it became my mission to engineer his return to power. I recruited followers and we prayed to him, gradually awakening his consciousness. He'd been stuck in the form of a small dog on the streets of Al-Khali for decades, not even remembering who he was. As our numbers grew, Anu Anu's power grew, and eventually he was able to slip aboard a ship and steal his way here to Ankh-Morpork.
The Milka.
That's right. The Milka also stopped off at Sort, where it picked up Mundi. He was supposed to be bringing us the Sortese falchion, having stolen it from a dig at Sorta. The archaeologists didn't even know it was there. Unfortunately, what we hadn't counted on was that Mundi was a man with few scruples and even less brains to go with it. Either he approached Horst, or Horst approached him. One way or another, he arranged to sell the sword to that devious troll.
Only he didn't have the sword, did he? He'd concealed it in one of the crates in the cargo hold.
We didn't know that. We just knew that Mundi had gone to ground. That's why I hired you to find him.
And when I did, your cult killed him. Only you'd expected the sword to be with him. And by the time he was dead, it was too late to ask him where he'd put it.
We couldn't believe our luck when you found the sword for us after Mundi's death. I'm sorry that my master had to stab you to get it.
Did you know I was going to get killed? Was that why you made me into a werewolf?
I suspected that things would get a little rough for you, and I believed you were too valuable an asset to waste.
I'm flattered. And the counterweight killings were your cult attempting to summon Nyarlathotep by mimicking the way he was summoned before. I don't get it.
With the falchion, my master can defeat the laddering horror again, and he will grow in power, ascending to the ranks of the most powerful gods, where he belongs.
That's all very well, but a lot of people died for that dream. You can't just go around killing people whenever the notion strikes you. It's not polite.
What are the lives of a few people against the prize?
Reagan knew, didn't he? Or at least suspected.
I don't know what he actually knew, but he suspected a lot. He'd been blackmailing me for weeks. He had to go.
Why are you telling me all this?
It's customary for the villain to explain his evil schemes when the hero is captured.
I'm no hero, and you're no villain either. We're just people.
You know it's not too late, Luton. Join us.
Join your cult.
Join the
What happens if I
cult.
refuse?
There's no point in refusing. It's already too late to stop the summoning of Nyarlathotep. Al-Khali was the 8th murder. Even now, the other cultists are gathering at the focal point for the invocation.
That would be the temple under the Disc Theater, I take it.
You're good. I'll give you that. Let's go, or we'll miss the pre-summoning.
What if I try to stop you?
Like I said, it's already too late for that. Join us, Luton. You know it's the only choice.
I could
not.
kill you and make a run for it.
You wouldn't hurt me, would you, Luton? After all we've been through.
You arranged the murder of your own brother, and you'd have me killed too if I got in the way.
So what? In this world, you get one chance at happiness.
You may be right. All right. I'll go along with this for now. But I'm not making any promises for the future.
That's good enough for me.
So like we
Carlotta
said,
told me she would have to bind me in case I got any foolish ideas, and then she escorted me into the depths of the temple.
it's a bad
It looked
idea.
like the whole crowd was there. As well as Carlotta, I recognized Mooncalf and Warb, the wizard from Saturnalia.
Oh, Warb.
8 of them in all. One for each person on the list. But my attention was drawn to the hulking mass of Anu Anu, and the golden sword that he was wielding like it was a toothpick.
It begins.
Take your places, people. Everyone remember your lines.
Nyarlathotep, who summoned thee? In accordance with the ancient pacts, we have made 8 sacrifices in the manner prescribed. Come to us.
I was filled with an overwhelming sensation of dread. I guess summoning rituals have that effect on me.
It is here. Now I command you, by the power of the fashion, to bend to my will.
This is a bad
To
idea.
my will, I command thee. I hold the fashion. You will obey me.
I got the impression that that wasn't supposed to happen. The next thing I knew, the temple was coming apart at the seams, and rocks were falling everywhere.
Uh-oh.
I don't know what was wrong, but it seemed as if Anu couldn't control the unspeakable force of cosmic horror that he had unleashed, and now it was loose in the city. As if my day wasn't bad enough already.
Oh man. We're pooched. See you next time, everybody.